Hey guys, welcome back to RHR Jen. I'm so glad you're here. You guys, we have a good one for you today. We're diving into the story that everyone's talking about. That's right. It's the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni of it all. Two Hollywood stars caught in a whirlwind of lawsuits, allegations, and high stakes drama. So this ranges from harassment claims to accusations of smear campaigns and everything in between, including multi-million-dollar defamation suits. I can't wait to get into this. I've been dying to talk about this. I've had a lot of requests to talk about this. Even if you're not familiar with the cases, don't worry about it. We will fill you all in. And who is this we speak of? Well, it's me and my lovely guest, John Witherspoon. That's right. To help us navigate the legal twists and turns of this blockbuster battle, I'm thrilled to welcome, of course, John Witherspoon. He's an attorney out of DC area. I've had him on before. You guys really responded well. He's such a nice guy and really does a good job of breaking down all things legal to a place where we can understand it, those of us not involved in the law. So I'm excited for you to see this. This is going to be a two-parter, and this is just the beginning because more stuff continues to come out about this, and he's already agreed to come back as more things break. So expect that we will continue to cover this. Again, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to dive into this. This is part 1 of 2. We talked for almost 3 hours, and we didn't even do the, hey, how are you doing? Good, how are you? Too much in this. It was just, okay, let's get into this because there's so much on both sides of this case. I'm excited for you to hear it. So we'll give our opinions. We do relate it to Meghan Markle some. We relate it to Amber Heard some. I think Jada Pinkett Smith even comes up. The narcissism of it all. I'm so excited for you to join us for this. So again, I'm Jen. Thank you to my guest John for being here. He has an Instagram. Make sure that you're following that. And we are encouraging him to start up a channel. So hopefully he'll do that very soon. You'll be the first to know when he does. But again, thank you for your time, John. Thank you guys for being here. Now let's get into this video. Honk honk, everyone. Hey guys, welcome back to RHR Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Joining me today, John Witherspoon. Hi, John, attorney from DC. So glad you're here.
Hey, Jen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. We're sitting here in DC. The first of 8 inches of snow is accumulating, so I'm doing my best to not look out the window.
Well, I'm in Florida, so yeah, maybe you can throw snowballs at me or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'll send one FedEx.
Yes, please. Thank you. Well, John, I brought you here today because, I wanted to go into the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni of it all. And I thought, who better to walk me through this chaos than you and maybe help break down and explain some of the legal aspects of what all's going on with this whole situation. So, well, first of all, how are you today? You doing okay?
I'm doing fine. Yep.
Good.
Glad to be here.
Good. I'm glad to have you here. Now, I have to give you a hard time every time you hear and say, everybody bugs me. When are you getting a channel? Is that still something you're kicking around at some point?
I am kicking it around, and I've actually gotten some really good feedback on things that people would like to see. And I've been really grateful for the comments that people have left in support of that. So yes, I appreciate you bringing that up because it is something that I'm probably going to do. And everybody seems very interested in not only legal stuff, but people want to know about Washington, D.C., especially, obviously people who haven't been here. And Washington is a beautiful, beautiful city in the springtime. It's very lush. The people, when they come here, one of their comments is, I cannot believe how many trees are in Washington. And in fact, if you look at the city from like Google Earth, you can see how green it is in the summertime pictures. And so a lot of people are interested in that. A lot of people want to see the museums. A lot of people want to be walked around the White House and down onto the National Mall. And so there's a lot of stuff that I can potentially go into. So I've gotten great feedback. And like I said, I've been very appreciative of it.
I've always been curious about the Smithsonian. Are you allowed to film there? I don't even know off the top of my head.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And there's some amazing stuff in the Smithsonian, as I'm sure everybody knows. And the trick is to get in there at some point when it's not jam packed, and especially like spring break. I mean, the natives in Washington, when spring break, and especially when the cherry blossoms, I mean, people just, it's like want to put a, tarp over my head or something. And there are people actually that have there are T-shirts that you can buy in Washington that say, "I'm not a tourist, I live here,"
Oh,
and that's one of the jokes.
that's
And
funny.
it's awful because I shouldn't say it's awful. I mean, we're grateful, and I'm lucky, I'm blessed to live in a place that people actually want to come and visit, because a lot of
Mhm.
places, a lot of cities in the world would be grateful and would give anything to have the tourists come into town. But you can always tell one of the things in Washington is that there's a very strong um, precedent when you get on an escalator to go down into the subway. If you make the mistake of standing on the left side instead of standing on the right, you will be mowed down. I guarantee you,
Oh.
from somebody behind you. And it doesn't, it happens going down, it'll happen going up, and
Mhm.
you'll get your feelings hurt, because that's just like rule number one in Washington is don't ever stand on the left side of the escalator. You stand to the right, walk to the left, and there's some hardcore metro system subway riders who will straighten you out. You will not make that mistake twice.
See, you're already giving us so many tips. You need to start this channel so you can teach us things like that.
There you go. There you go. I'll tell you
But
the other big tip too. People always want to know, okay, if I come to Washington and I buy a souvenir, where are the best souvenir places?
Mhm.
And the answer is, without a doubt, in the museum shops in the Smithsonian museums,
Oh,
especially
really?
like, oh yeah, the Air and Space Museum has stuff that would just blow your mind. And
Mhm.
it's a little bit more expensive, but they don't sell any garbage in there. They sell really good quality souvenirs, and you're going to pay a little bit more, but
Sure.
it benefits the museum. I mean, they're trying to, keep the museum running. So
Yeah.
you're also not paying any admission charge for any of the Smithsonian museums, except I think maybe there's one or two that charge admission. I'm not even sure what they are, but the point being, um, you're getting in there free to begin with. So why not throw them a bone and buy a T-shirt or a trinket or a model of the space shuttle or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Don't buy it from some, you know, guy who's got an old post office truck that's, been painted over, and they're selling junk out of the back of it on the street somewhere. So
Yeah, I
those are
really
my two opening tips for visiting DC. And so when I start the channel and do a video, I'll have to throw the rest of them in there.
I look forward to that. I think that's great. I really wanna bring my Gosling to the Smithsonian. I wanna bring myself, I haven't been, so I think it seems like a cool place, so that's cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, I look forward to it, and we definitely circle back and let us know once you do that, and we'll all flock to you and and join and subscribe. But I do know you have Instagram, so I know a lot of flockers have subscribed to you or followed you over there, so we'll make sure if we haven't that we go do that. Is there any other way we can support you, or that's it for now?
Well, you're very kind to ask, but no,
Mhm.
that's the main thing right now, just the
Okay.
Instagram. And people say, "Oh, you should have Twitter too." And it's like, yeah, I know. I'll get around to it. My Twitter is like with you and Instagram. Like,
It's a mental
you know,
block. Maybe you can teach me Instagram, I can teach you Twitter.
there you go. There you go. I know it's out there, but I just
Just can't
don't want
take
to dip
it.
my toe in quite yet.
Fair enough. Well, I'm so glad you're here. So let's talk the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, It Ends With Us. Now, I am gonna go ahead and kick this one off and say, this is big. This whole situation is really big, and we're just coming in on it. So just a blanket statement that the information we're presenting here is our opinion, and it is what we understand of it so far, and it just continues to change so fast. So, as things change, I'm sure we'll talk more about it. I'm going to have you back. I'm already planning that, John. So as things update, we'll talk more about it, and maybe by then you'll have a channel so you can talk about it as well. But these are just opinions, and this is what we've learned, and the way we understand things. So there's going to be things that I get wrong. There's just too many details of this. Correct me in the comments. It's totally fine. I welcome it. I just really want to dive in, and there's just so much to it. So anything you need to add to that, John, or you feel same page?
No, that's a great comment, and an important comment, and I would echo those sentiments that we're we're basing everything that we say on our best opinions of what's been released or has been speculated about. So
Yeah,
yeah, nobody
absolutely. Yeah.
should take any of this as gospel.
No, and there's just so much to it and so many details and yeah, absolutely, and so many opinions floating around and stuff. So we're gonna do our best and hopefully, hopefully present it in a concise way. But yeah, absolutely. So okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump right in. I would like to start with so it's based on, of course, in case you don't know, it's based on It Ends With Us, and that is by Colleen Hoover. So it's a book by Colleen Hoover. Now, I personally have read this author before. From what I've read a lot, so I'm trying to remember, but from what I remember, she tends to write dark things. So it's not a shocker that this is a dark topic. And the reason I bring that up is because that comes into play very much in this case, is that it's kind of alleged that Blake, it's almost like, okay, there's just so much to it. So let me just read this. So it's a novel about Lily Bloom, okay, who basically suffered from an abusive situation with her father, moves to Boston, starts a flower shop. She meets this neurosurgeon named, I think it's pronounced Ryle, who is played by, so Lily Bloom, of course, is Blake Lively. Ryle is Justin Baldoni. He's so much more than an actor in the movie, but I'm just saying for now, that's who he plays. But it deals with really dark DV topics. It ends
Mhm.
up being like a DV situation. So it's a sensitive topic. And that's one of the points throughout this, is that it's alleged that Blake just didn't treat it as a sensitive topic. It was more of a rom-com for her. So that's a big point of contention, it seems. And I'm talking a lot, so please jump in if you have anything that you need to add to this. But I'm just gonna kind of explain in general
Mhm.
about this. So it has to do with the themes of DV, of love, and
Mhm.
the complexities of breaking the cycle, basically. Um,
Right.
so Blake has been criticized throughout this, and I'll get into a timeline of it all. I just want to put this general statement out there, which is, it seems to be that she's criticized because she seems to be inappropriately glamorizing, is what people are accusing her of. Her promotional images seem to be on like glamorous high fashion aesthetics and stuff, and um people are saying that it just doesn't align with the serious and the somber subject. So
Mhm.
from this you can kind of, I speculate that she and Baldoni just had totally separate visions, and that'll come out. But the reason Baldoni is so important to this whole thing, not only is he the actor and it's the two of them versus each other, it's that it was his company, Wayfarer Studios, who secured the rights to this book. So that happened
Correct.
in 2019. So it's been years of behind the scenes working on this project. He spent several
Mhm.
years developing it, including adapting the novel for the screen, casting, navigating the production delays. This was in the middle of, I believe, the writer's strike and things that
Mhm.
happened during this.
I think
We'll
there
get
were
into.
two strikes. I think they had to stop twice for
You're exact.
strikes.
Yes, yeah, I think so. Let's see here. And so so again, Baldoni had significant personal and professional investment in this film. He had a clear vision of how to bring the story to life, and he, in my opinion, he seemed to understand that this focused more on the DV. I have to say that because YouTube's weird about the words, but DV of it all. So,
Mhm.
eh, eh, about the love and the redemption and things like that. And he seemed to be a little bit more, again, in my opinion, sensitive to it, whereas Lively seemed to think it was romantic comedy. I think she said something along the lines of like, "Bring your girlfriends." like,
Yeah.
it was just such a weird, I don't know, just a weird take on the whole darkness. She seemed to ignore the darkness of it all.
Mhm.
We'll get into it, but there were like several. There was a Blake cut, they say, of the movie, and a Baldoni cut. His sounds like it was much more sensitive to the DV issues, whereas hers was much more. Well, it's actually ended up what was released and
Mhm.
tested lower from with audiences, from the way I understand it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess I'll get into the timeline unless there's any other general thoughts you had going into this.
No, I think you've done a good summary from what I understand about just the general background of of
Yeah.
the problem and how it got started.
I mean, real talk. Okay, so again, just coming in on this, and my mind will change a million times, but from the way I see it, I I'm I'm Team Justin, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like he's the one that has been committed to this project for a long time, and we'll get into some of the accusations against
Hmm.
Blake and some of the accusations against him, but I
Yeah.
just have trouble, and I wanna get into the Ryan Reynolds and how he plays into it. I'm sorry, what were you about to say? Uh-huh.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree. I think with the information that's out there right now, and from having read some of
Mhm.
the complaint, I would agree that it seems like Team Justin is the side to be on. However, the important caveat is, can't tell you the number of times that I've been in a courtroom and
Mhm.
have heard a lawyer make an opening argument, which is basically a watered down version of the actual complaint. And you hear the first opening statement, and the thought that goes through your mind is, this is a complete waste of time. I don't know why everybody's here. This is an open and shut case. And then all of a sudden, the other lawyer stands up
Uh-huh.
and starts to give their opening statement. And then you think to yourself, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that was coming, and I didn't understand that aspect of it.
Mhm.
So you do have to be a little bit cautious. I mean, I
True.
think I think we're probably a little bit biased
Mhm.
because of the fact that Justin Baldoni put that website out there, and he laid
Yeah.
out all of these text messages and the complaints and everything else. And people who have read that, there it is. Everybody
Mhm.
who's read that has said, "Wow, this is kind of you know." It speaks for itself, and there's no issue here. This is open and shut. But of
Mhm.
course, we've only got one side of it at this point,
Sure, and I
and
don't
it's
normally nothing is ever open and shut, right? I mean,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. There's always two sides to a story,
Mhm.
and um, it's just. I'm not saying that our minds will definitely be changed at some point, but
No.
I do think, based on the information out there right now, if that's really all that there is of the story, and if you take his account of what happened in the
Mhm.
opening part, in the introduction of his complaint,
Mhm.
um, it's hard not to say, "Wow, what's going on here?
Absolutely.
Why are we litigating this?
Yeah.
This
Mhm.
ought to be settled, and Blake Lively ought to be on the losing end of it." But we'll see.
Exactly.
We'll see. A lot of
Yeah,
water to go under the
absolutely.
bridge before that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'm very curious to see how it plays out. I find it completely interesting, hence why we're talking about it, and there's just so much to it. That's why I meant to preface it and say, "It looks like I'm looking down at stuff a lot." It's because I have pages of notes because there's just so much to this whole situation. I just wanna make sure that I hit, like, blanket statements with this, so I kinda keep myself on track. That's what I'm looking at. But, so let's look at a timeline and kinda talk about that. And again, anything that comes up, please, let's talk about it. So it looks like around January of 2019 is when Justin, through his company Wayfair Studios, options the right to this book. So it's,
Hmm.
again, it ends with us. January 2023, Blake Lively is announced as the lead actress to play Lily Bloom. Now, let me say this. I just found a clip, um, yeah, I can try to pop it in here. Let me write myself a note. Where are we at? We are at 16 minutes. There is a clip of Blake Lively talking about, I don't know what the interview was from, but somebody found an interview, I believe it was before all this, if I understand it correctly, where she's talking about, oh, yeah, I'll pretend, I'm summarizing, but basically, I'll pretend to be whatever they want me to be to get my foot in the door. And then once I'm in, then I start giving my creative changes. So I just wonder, in my opinion, it feels like that may be what happened here, because it sounds like she was potentially a willing participant and then all of a sudden dug her heels in pretty hard. So as I understand it, but
Yeah.
okay, so let's see. Yeah, January 2023 is when she joined, and the author Colleen Hoover spoke up and said she's excited that Lively got the part. She called her Dream Lily, which is of course, the main character is Lily, and that she thought Baldoni was her ideal of, however you say, Ryle, I think is how you pronounce that character's name. So in
Mhm.
May 2023 is when they began filming. That happened in Hoboken, New Jersey. So as you were saying, that it briefly halted due to the Writers and Actor Guild strike. It remained on pause. It went through January 2024. That's when it picked back up because the strikes concluded. And I was just doing the math like, damn, so they just hung out. Who's paying for that? Like, that's a lot. And I'm thinking, if I'm Justin, I'm freaking out. I'm not even going into the logistics of a strike or anything like that, or whether it's good or bad, but I'm just saying in general, if that's your project and you spent years making it and the strike happens right in the middle of it, that's got to be so stressful.
Yep.
So January 2024, that's when it resumes. August 2024 is when it was released into theaters. They're calling it a box office success, grossing significant amounts domestically and globally. But that's when the rumors of a feud started to pop up between Lively and Baldoni. The thing that was noticeable to people is that they were avoiding each other during promotional events. So I remember this. I remember people starting to take notice and say, why aren't these co-stars ever together? It's understandable that they do send co-stars to separate junkets or whatever you call it, press events,
Mm-hmm.
but they were, I think, noticeably separate from each other. So December 2024 is when Blake files, and you can definitely explain this better than I can, but she filed a complaint with the accusing Baldoni of sexual harassment on
Mm-hmm.
that, and then of an
And that was in California, I believe.
yeah, I think so. Yes, you're right. California civil rights. That's right. Creating a hostile work environment. These are accusations that she has. And orchestrating a smear campaign against her after she raised issues about his behavior on set.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, dun, dun. And then December 24th, she then filed a lawsuit in New York federal court against Baldoni, Wayfarer Studios, and others involved in the film, claiming further harassment and defamation. Now,
Right.
December 31st, Baldoni countersued Lively, as well as her husband, Ryan Reynolds, alleging defamation, civil extortion, claiming that Lively and her team attempted to hijack the creative direction of the film and ruin his reputation. I'm almost done with this because I know I want to dive into all this. I just want to hit these dates. January 2025, so not long ago. Public discourse and legal battles intensify, with both parties releasing statements and evidence. Baldoni's legal team launches a website. That's when the website went up to counter Lively's claims with text and a timeline of events. There's also a mention of behind-the-scenes footage released by Baldoni's team, purportedly to refute Lively's claims. January 27th, a trial date is set for March 9th of 2026. And then February, the 2nd is when Baldoni's attorney released more documents on the website, including an amended complaint, additional evidence. February 7th, the feud became public topic of humor at Hollywood awards shows, highlighting the public nature of their legal battle. And then finally, February 10th, and there's actually been more since then, but as of this February 10th, continued commentary from Hollywood figures on the situation, with various celebrities expressing support for both sides. Honestly, I've seen both sides being supported. So there's that. And then I just found out, you may have known it, about another lawsuit that just hit, which we can talk about briefly, that involved like a publicist, something like that was also suing Lively, that had worked with Baldoni. But that's a lot of information. Let's go. What you got? Just kidding. You want? I mean, I'll do whatever I can talk about Justin's defense if you want, or if you want to talk about the legal aspects. Flockers of sitting questions, whatever's good for you. I want to hit it all.
Yeah. I guess at the highest level, it's one of those cases where, like, if you were a parent and these were your kids, you would say, all right, you both get I don't want to deal with this. You both get a timeout. You go over there for 15 minutes. You go over there for 15 minutes. and don't say a word, don't look at each other, don't think bad thoughts about each other. Just kind of come back when you're both mature enough to resolve the situation. But apparently that's not in the cards for any number of reasons. And I have some theories
Sure.
which we can get into. One thing I'll just say as well, as far as this case is concerned, is that well, there are two things that I think are important to keep in mind. Number one is you're talking about people who are alleging inappropriate behavior of I'll just say of a romantic nature, who have been involved in a scenario of a romantic nature. So right from the get, it's not like this is not a person that works on an automobile assembly line saying that the person 2 stations down has made rude comments to me or left, provocative letters in my locker or something like that. No, that's not what's going on. We're talking about people who are, because of the nature of their activity, they are involved in those kinds of things. And one thing I've always actually wondered about too, it's like, let's say you have an actress that's supposed to wear a pair of jeans, and she puts the jeans on, and the director of the film looks at the actress in the jeans and the director, who, I'll just make it even easier, it'll be a male director and a female who's wearing a pair of jeans. And let's say the director looks at this female actress and says, you know what, your rear end doesn't look very good in those jeans. Is that a legitimate thing for a director to say to an actress? I mean, presumably, yes. I mean, this is important.
The art direction. Yeah. So if that's a pivotal part of the scene. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct. So on the set of a movie, the director might tell the actress directly, hey, pull your pants up or do something, or might go to the costume designer and say, hey, get her another pair of jeans that fit differently. I mean, it's a thing. It's a potentially legitimate complaint, especially if the look of the actress is supposed to be an important, integral part of their character.
Absolutely.
Okay, that probably is. I'm not in Hollywood. I'm not an employment lawyer and all that stuff, but that's probably a legitimate question to raise, because for the point you made, Jen, that this is an artistic, creative aspect of the film. Or, hey, you need so-and-so female actress, you need to unbutton your shirt another button. It does not, the way you're buttoning your shirt does not fit your character. Okay, you're in what would otherwise be a very bizarre territory under any other circumstances. But when you're filming a movie, it's like, okay, well, this is part of the creative process. So anyway, the point is that you're talking about, I mean, some of the allegations, as I understand them, are that there are times when they're doing a scene and then the director says cut, or somebody, whoever's, says cut, they stop doing the scene, and then all of a sudden there are these allegations that what was going on between the takes was somehow inappropriate, or it carried over afterwards. And I get it. These are professional actors. They are supposed to be able to stop and start, but human nature being what it is, it may not be quite as cut and dried. It's not as black and white as it might otherwise be, because a lot of actors would probably say, well, geez, it's hard to, have a romantic scene with someone and then not still be a little bit playful. Because if I throw the switch and stop behaving that way, well, then I've got to turn it back on and get back in the mood. So anyway, that's all part of this, as I understand it.
And then what happens if, so sorry, I just hit my computer, but if the actors between takes want to say, what if he's trying to discuss the scene with her? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? Like that's a good point. There's so much to it. And we can, I remember hearing about an intimacy coordinator that kind of helps with some of the physical aspects of it. And when you're doing scenes like that, and then, but you bring up such a good point. That's
so the normal workplace rules about the way that two people, especially of opposite sexes, interact with each other, all of a sudden I mean, everybody knows you don't say this and you don't poke somebody.
Sure.
You
You're not
know,
walking up and kissing them on the mouth usually. Yeah.
yes,
Right.
yes, but this is a
Right.
different. This is make believe. So the line between
Absolutely.
reality and make believe all of a sudden becomes very gray. No, I mean,
Yes.
not completely gray, but
No, of
I
course.
think people
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
that's a very interesting component of this whole scenario.
If I can add one thing, I was listening to, and I'll give the creator a shout out. It's called Sesh. She's got a huge following. I was trying to make sure I understood some of the nuances of this case, and that's something she brought up. It is alleged, and I'm going to get some of the details wrong because I literally listened to it right before I jumped on, that so Blake had, for the way I understand it, Blake, that's part of the thing Blake accused Justin of, is like stealing extra kisses and stuff that weren't necessary. Well, he's since come out and said, no, no, I would, it only happened when it was called for in the script. She was fully aware, and it was up to Blake if she wanted to improvise an extra kiss for the scene benefit, not him. And so they
Yes,
had clearly defined it from what I understand. So yeah, I
yes,
find that's just stuff I never would have thought about when I watch a movie and I think, these actors are kissing. I never thought about, okay, did they mutually agree? Okay, we get to kiss 6 times and then that's it. How does that
right,
work? It's
right.
interesting.
Yeah, it's a great point. And the other thing is too that invariably, or not invariably, but a lot of times you'll hear actors being interviewed after a movie and people say, wow, you guys had such great chemistry. How did you manage to pull that off? And one or the other actors will say, well, you know, Debbie, she really is responsible for the way that I responded to her because she pulled it out of me.
Yeah.
She set the tone and she set the mood and she provoked me to give my best performance.
Uh-huh.
So I can easily see something like that factoring in too, where you do have interactions between the takes
Sure.
where
Yeah.
the actors remain flirty and they remain playful and remain sort of romantic. So
It would
yeah,
be hard to just not warm up. It's just 2 strangers walk in a room and, okay, pretend like you've been married for 3 years or whatever, or newlyweds or whatever
absolutely,
it is. It just be like,
absolutely,
hi."
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
It's
again,
like
I'm not an
Harry
ex.
and Meghan, right?
Right,
Like, "I
right.
like you, and"
Yes, exactly, exactly. It cannot be mechanical and it cannot be completely scripted. And it's again, I'm just applying my own impression to this, but my impression would be that it has to be something where there is some chemistry between the two people that is palpable, not only when the camera's on, but also when the camera's off.
Mhm.
And um,
Yeah,
it just has to complicate things in a way that you would
absolutely.
not see under 99% of other circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such an interesting point. Wow. I guess, I mean, if you want to talk, so just at a base level, so Blake brought the suit first. Talk to me
Correct.
about that. What do you have the details, or otherwise I can pull them? I don't have exactly what she's. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think they're totally critical, but basically the gist of it is that she basically complained of an inappropriate workplace environment and so on and so forth. And
Mhm.
she was just unhappy about that. And
And
uh,
accused him of a smear campaign as well, I believe.
correct,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
correct. Yeah,
Which is
it was.
interesting because one might argue that it seems to be, from what I understand, it seems to be the other way around maybe, but we'll get into that, yeah.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
That's
And part of what made this complicated was that she put some pressure on Justin Baldoni to relinquish some of the control of the movie.
mhm,
And he did not care for that.
mhm.
And it's not entirely clear to me why he seems to have capitulated to her demands for a number of elements of control over the project. But
Yeah,
there's the countersuit out there as well, and
sure.
some of what Justin put in his countersuit addresses some of some of her allegations.
I can give my opinion. This is just my opinion based on things I've read, because I wondered the same thing. and again, I mean, this is just my thoughts on this. It seems to me it seemed to be a popularity contest. And in
Yeah.
general, Blake and her husband Ryan are the popular actors. And the way I understand it is that, and I know WME is involved, and I say it like that because that's very much a Meghan thing too. But um, the way I understand is they were trying to keep Blake more happy because especially at the beginning, because she was the, I guess, the name to the project, one could argue. So I wonder if it was almost like a popular, that's how I'm taking it. And that
Hmm.
because I've heard allegations that like Blake would try to pull people into her side, including the author herself and different people, maybe allegedly like promising them, like there's speculations that they promised them roles if there was a sequel to the movie and things like that. So of course, if you hear things like that and you want to be part of the sequel, you might side with Blake on some of this stuff. So, in my opinion, it seems to be more of a popularity thing. If that's the case, again, I feel for Justin because if this was his project for years and he really believed in it, was trying to approach it from a sensitive place, and then you got somebody that's allegedly destroying your movie. Like, that's got
Yeah.
to be
Or
you talk
not
about a
only,
hostile work environment, that would be for
yeah,
I would think he could argue that.
destroying or allegedly stealing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, hijacking, everyone say, yeah. Wow.
And taking your and allegedly trying to take down your reputation in the process.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess if you feel tell us more about the legal side, or if it helps, I can ask you some of the Flocker questions because they had some legal related questions, however you want to
Yeah,
do it.
why don't we start with those, because that may
Yeah, it'll open
prompt
up a
a,
conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Let's do that. Let's see. I did have okay, yeah, I've got some stuff on Justin. And then I do want to get because Ryan Reynolds is involved in this too. So I'd like to talk about that. But yeah, let's do some of the questions. I've got those. Let's see.
If I can just jump in on the Ryan Reynolds
Please.
angle,
Yeah.
I have not followed Ryan Reynolds' career,
Mhm.
closely.
Mhm.
Um, the thing that I know him most for, he did all these commercials for Mint Mobile a while
Yes.
back, and I always just my impression of him was, wow, seems like a super nice guy, and
Sure.
he's trying to save everybody a few bucks on their cell phone bill. Well, why not? I'll give Mint Mobile a look because Ryan Reynolds is telling me to, and he seems trustworthy and nice and
Mhm.
everything like that, and sort of playful and fun in these ads.
Yeah.
So why not? And then all of a sudden, there's this whole other side of him that's being alleged.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's an interesting aspect of it too.
I think so
Um,
too.
so
Yeah, I'm actually a fan of his or in general. I know nothing about him personally, but acting wise, yeah, I've seen a lot of his movies. I watch all the Deadpool movies, and
mhm.
I mean, even back in the day, he was in that movie Waiting. Like he's pretty funny. What's that? There's another one he was in with Anna Faris that I always like, Best Friends, I think. But he's
Mhm.
funny. I
Yeah,
enjoy his personality. He's good looking and charismatic. I mean, that's everything you want in an actor, right? So.
right, right, absolutely, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's I mean, but yeah, it's weird to learn this stuff and to find out more of this behind the scenes stuff, and it's brought up allegations now that he's tough to work with, and they're alleging that maybe that's been the case on some of the other again, allegations,
Mhm.
that may be the case that that maybe again allegedly Blake picked up some of her idea to hey say whatever to get on a movie set and then take over it may have come from some of his stunts. So
Yeah, yeah, you
interesting.
never know. You never know.
Never know. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, the flock had asked some questions, so I'll just ask them and then expand
Yeah,
upon any of it. We can get to conversation and we'll cover some of the stuff. But the first question I got for you was, how would you say this case compares to the Depp Heard case?
really interesting question. And I'm
Mhm.
sure a lot of people have kind of wondered that. I would say there's some tremendous similarities. You've got you've got a male female dynamic.
Mhm.
You have uh, a, a lawsuit over defamation. You
Mhm.
have a countersuit. You have a major newspaper involved, the difference being that in the Depp case, Washington Post was talked about a lot, but they were not a party to the litigation. And in this case, there is involvement of the New York Times as part of the litigation, and that may or may not bear some fruit. Too early to tell. And as I said, there's a lawsuit, there's a countersuit. Both cases are going to be tried at the same time. Which, by the way, this is a good opportunity to just explain exactly how that works.
Yeah.
The courts are interested. Not just the courts, but the lawyers and the parties and everything are interested in efficiency. If you can kill two birds with one stone, then that's the way to go about things. So in the Depp trial, as you might recall, there was the Johnny Depp lawsuit brought against Amber Heard. She then countersued, and the facts were germane to both cases to the extent that the judge said, you know what, we're going to just bring all this together. And when the jury goes out to answer questions, they're going to have two sets of jury instructions.
Okay.
And I'm glossing this over.
Sure.
Basically, the jury is going to go out and they're going to answer all these questions that are relevant to both cases. So that way we won't have to go through all of these facts a second time, have all of these witnesses come back a second time, have a different jury. We're going to do this all in one shot, and the jury's going to give us an answer for both cases. And that's just like what happened in the Johnny Depp case. I believe the award in the Depp case was $10 million for Johnny Depp, and I believe, this is totally on recollection, but I believe it was $2 million for Amber Heard. And a lot of people thought, oh, well, then they just offset and she just owes him $8 million. And no, that's not the way this works. Ultimately, she would have to write him a check for $10 million. He would turn around and have to write a check for $2 million. It's not like we're just going to add it all up and then whoever comes out owing somebody is going to just write one check. It doesn't work that way. And the reason is because each side can be appealed or not appealed. Each case, I should say, can be appealed or not appealed. One or the other side may or may not be able to pay the full amount. And so just for clarity of bookkeeping, they're still treated as two separate transactions. The cases don't merge at some point when it comes down to passing dollars and cents back and forth across the table.
That right there is why I love having you on, because I never would have thought of that and I wouldn't have understood it. I just assume, okay, well then she owes him $8 million. I never would have thought about that. Of course, one side can go, appeal or however it works. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for explaining that. That's great.
Sure.
That's interesting. I mean, anything else in terms of that, or you feel good about that as far as any other ways you compare?
I do think there are a lot of similarities between the Depp case and this case. It's a he said, she said. There's a countersuit involved. It's very high profile, a lot of celebrities. Here's the other thing, which I guess we can get into at this point too. There are different types of wins when it comes to a scenario like this. You've got the win that you're trying to get in the legal system, in the court of law. There's also the win that you're trying to get in the court of public opinion. And there's a temptation, and we've talked about the website that Justin Baldoni has put up with not only the case materials and the complaints and so forth, but also a lot of potential evidence for the case, where there are allegedly apparently text messages floating around that have flown back and forth and so forth. And so the trick is to win in both the court of law and the court of public opinion without irritating the judge. That's the trick, because if you upset the judge and the judge feels like you're trying to game the case in a way that is going to distort the judicial process, judge is going to be upset about that. And we sort of saw that already. We've seen shades and hints of that in the Diddy case, where his family members released this video of one of his little children having a birthday and blowing out the candles on the cake and all of that kind of stuff. And everybody said, look, this is not an accident that this is being released. This is an attempt to, at
Humanize
best,
him, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, at best, it's an attempt to sway public opinion. And at
Uh-huh.
worst, if you want to be totally cynical about it, it's an attempt to influence potential jurors.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's where the judge really starts to take notice and say, look, we're not going to have this. I'm not going to spend the time and effort to go through this and have people doing these extrajudicial activities and playing all these games and trying to get on TMZ and Entertainment Tonight and Inside Edition and all this kind of stuff. I'm not having that. And so you end up in a situation where people start talking about gag orders, and that's exactly what happened in the Depp case. And I believe there's some gag orders that have at least been discussed in the Baldoni case, if
Yeah.
not actually put into practice. So
The
that's
way I
the other side of it. And
The
again,
way I
it's
understand it is that they had asked they tried to gag Baldoni and the judge did not, if I understand that correctly. Yes.
correct.
Uh-huh.
But there's no guarantee that that's going to stay
Right.
that way. The judge could wake up in the middle of the night and say, you know what, I reconsider this, and we're going to have a gag order now because I don't
Mhm.
want this foolishness.
Yeah.
And judges do not like circuses. They do not. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people are upset. Oh, why can't we have cameras in the courtroom? Well, if people were around to see the O.J. Simpson case, it turned into an absolute circus, and it became a a Hollywood production with the lawyers mugging for the camera and doing
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. And I think it was pretty clear in that case that it may have the presence of television cameras may have impacted the outcome of the case.
Mhm.
That's a judgment call, but I have heard that opinion plenty of times.
Hmm.
So in this case, um, in first of all, it's in federal court, and there are never cameras allowed in federal court. And but by which I mean TV cameras or still cameras. That's why you see these chalk drawings of that, these artists do, where they sit down and they draw the characters. Um, and Also in the New York state courts, I believe you're not allowed to have cameras.
Mm.
Unlike, for instance, in Virginia, where the Depp trial was, where the judge, and it's still up to the discretion of the judge, but Judge Ascarate in the Johnny Depp trial in Fairfax County Circuit Court in Virginia, she said, yes, I'm willing to allow cameras. The interesting thing is, too, and people probably don't realize this, just as an aside on the topic of cameras in the courtroom, in the
Mhm.
Depp trial, it was very interesting. There were two cameras in the courtroom, and they were both very small cameras. I'm talking about like maybe a little bit bigger than my fist,
Mhm.
and they were mounted on camera mounts that were disguised, for lack of a better term, with black drapes. The
Uh,
cameras themselves were black. It was
uh,
very unobtrusive. And then, you saw a couple of wires going, under the seating and out the door into a control room. There was a guy in a control room who was remote control, tilting and
mhm.
panning the cameras and zooming the cameras, but he was outside. It was not this giant setup like it was a game show or something like that, where you had
Uh,
big burly guys with big giant cameras that were on rollers. No, none of that. It was all done by a remote control. So even under circumstances where you do have cameras in the courtroom, it's typically done in as absolutely low key a way as possible. But unfortunately, or for better or for worse, I should say, um, in the Depp trial, there were cameras, and in this trial in New York, as is the case in the Diddy trial, because it's in
mhm.
federal court, no cameras, and even in New York State court, no cameras. So
Gotcha.
that may change someday. I hear
Mhm.
a lot of people complain and moan and groan about it, but it is what it is, and
Sure.
we just have to deal with it. So,
Uh-huh. Let me ask you, this may be a dumb question, but it just hit me. I didn't even think about talking about this at the beginning, but so these are civil cases. I would just think with sexual harassment, is that generally a civil case? Or is
yes,
that
yes,
okay. I didn't realize that. Okay, okay, gotcha. Gotcha. I
yeah,
didn't understand how that
yeah.
works, but these are all civil cases. Uh-huh.
Correct. And I think one of the questions that somebody had asked, is there a potential criminal case that's
Oh,
involved
yeah.
here?
Uh-huh.
And
Sure.
I would say no, and unless there's been an allegation of assault of some
Gotcha.
sort,
Mhm.
physical,
Mhm.
somebody puts their hands on somebody else inappropriately,
Mhm.
or there's some crime, but this is not really a criminal type of. This is we're talking about a case where it's kind of a war of words,
Yeah.
and an accusation that somebody has done something that has caused some business arrangements to sour.
Mhm.
So that's really what we're talking about in this case. It's not really a criminal type of activity.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So, let's see. The next question that somebody asked, and this is just an opinion question, but I am curious about your opinion. Do you have an opinion on who has the best case at this point?
Yeah, well, that kind of goes back to the point that we were making a little while ago, and that is based on everything that's out there in the wild right now. I think Justin Baldoni probably has the upper hand. And
Mhm.
there's another component of that, which we'll talk about, which involves the letter that Blake Lively said about the potential deposition and what attorney's going to be involved in that. We can get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But based on everything that we know now, I would just sort of say at this stage of the game, which is a very early stage,
Mhm.
that it looks like Justin Baldoni has some really interesting, compelling information to refute these accusations that Blake Lively has lobbed at him. But as I
Yeah.
also mentioned, um, very easy to sit in court and hear an opening statement where all these facts and figures are thrown out. And you think, gosh, this is a waste of time. This is a slam dunk. Let's all go home. I don't know why we're here. And then the other lawyer stands up and gives the other side of the story. And you think, wait a minute, hold on. Now I'm a little more conflicted. Not quite
Yeah.
as sure. I'm not quite as sure as I was 5 minutes ago before the other lawyer started talking. So it's very interesting. Like I said, I do think Justin has the upper hand, but anything
Mhm.
is possible. It's very, very early.
So again, this might be a dumb question, but as a non-lawyer, the way I understand it is because Blake brought the suit, she has the burden of proof, right,
Correct.
on this. And then when he countersues, how does that is it just understood
Same.
that he's answering back or he's got the burden of proof on that part?
No, he has the burden of proof. They're two separate cases
Okay.
just being tried together. So all of the
Okay.
normal
Gotcha.
burdens and everything else would still apply. And
Okay.
the information that's going to be elicited from exhibits and witnesses and depositions and everything else is
Mhm.
going to be applied to her allegation and
Mhm.
his allegation, and they're going to be weighed separately.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. Gotcha. Let's see here. The next question we got for you was how did Ryan Reynolds get involved in the lawsuit? This is about Blake's professional life and I can try to help with this as well. Are you up on this?
Why don't you, yeah, throw out whatever information you have because I'd be interested to
Sure.
hear.
Yeah, no problem. I actually pulled bear with me one second. I pulled something about that because I honestly didn't fully know. I just thought, well, he's her husband, but it was a little bit more than that. It actually several things happened. What to me the most interesting way he's involved is and you may or may not know about this that he allegedly drafted a statement for Baldoni during this. Are you aware of this? This is kind of wild to me. So reports are indicating that Ryan Reynolds, alongside with Blake Lively, allegedly drafted a statement for Baldoni to release. This was yeah, it was aiming at mitigating negative publicity surrounding Lively because all this negative publicity was coming out. In my opinion, it's because of her own actions. We saw her act not super nice to the reporters and things, from what I could tell, just kind of being a jerk during some of the interviews, and then again treating a very sensitive topic like it was a party and a rom-com and bring your girlfriends and so weird. But anyway, so the from what I could tell, it was aimed to mitigate negative publicity surrounding Lively during the promotion of It Ends With Us. The statement
Mhm.
was intended to have Baldoni take accountability. And I read the statement and it was very much, it's all my fault. Let's learn from this together. Just like and no wonder he didn't want to,
Yeah,
take this statement on. But it just says, according to Baldoni, this draft was rejected because it implied culpability without addressing the actual issues at hand and could have further damaged his reputation. Do you have any thoughts on this component of it?
yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting, and again, we're going to have to look at the facts that come out relative to the exhibits and the evidence and the depositions and responses to interrogatories. And interrogatories, by the way, are just you send a list of written questions that you want to, answer this, tell me this, what happened on this day? Did you see so and so on that day? Did you have a phone call? Did you say such and such? So that's all part of it as well. And I'd be willing to bet that Justin Baldoni probably called up his lawyer and said, "Hey, I've got this letter here. What should I do about it?" And I'm sure the lawyer probably said, "No, don't do anything at all. This is headed for litigation probably. And you won't do yourself any favors by making some sort of admission like this. So just keep quiet about it and let the chips fall where they may, and we'll sort this out in front of a judge and a jury."
Absolutely. Another allegation against Ryan Reynolds involving this is, again, it has to do with WME, and this is just from what I could find online. There are allegations that Reynolds attempted to influence Baldoni's former talent agency, which was WME. We're familiar with that because of Meghan, by expressing his deep disdain for Baldoni and suggesting that the agency was working with a, quote, sexual predator. I hate even saying that because that's a strong allegation. You can't just throw that word, or you can't just call somebody that for funsies. And you know what I mean? Like if that's not the case, that's awful. It says this allegedly occurred during the premiere of a Deadpool Wolverine in 2024, where Reynolds supposedly demanded that WME drop Baldoni as a client. WME, however, has denied these claims, stating that there was no pressure from Reynolds to drop. So they're denying it. So that's important to note. But I've heard these allegations circling. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that. And to me, the thing that sticks out is there's something called tortious interference with business dealings, or different states have different names for it. But basically what it involves is if let's say I don't like the person who has the office across the hall and they're in a different business of some sort, but I don't like that guy, and I know that he's got a contract with some third party for whatever business they're involved in. If I go to that third party and I say, "Hey, you know what, this guy, he's a scumbag across the hall from me, and you shouldn't do business with him because he's done this and this and this, and you don't want to be tangled up in that stuff. So you better cut him off," and basically you're doing it out of spite. That can be a cause of action as well. When you screw up somebody's business relationships like that, that can be very problematic.
Wow.
And you know what's a theme that keeps running through this, and I hate to sound like a lawyer, but oh my goodness.
Heaven forbid.
I know, right?
I'd rather you sound like a lawyer than Meghan Markle or something.
Yeah, and it's like, gosh, if people would just keep their mouths shut.
Yeah.
And not say stupid things, not put stupid things in writing. There's an allegation that I think the allegation is that Justin Baldoni, somehow there were, nude pictures that were sent via text or email or something like that. It's like, why in the world? Nothing good ever comes from that type of picture. So why in the world would you send that? And as a lot of lawyers repeat all the time, don't ever say anything, don't ever do anything that you would not want talked about in a court of law in front of a jury. Because if everything goes south, and you've been sexting or whatever it is that you've been doing, or let's say your account gets hacked and somebody, blackmails you, or any number of these things can go off the rails. But we see this over and over and over again, where somebody says something, they do something, they write a letter, they send a text, and all of a sudden, just like we've seen in this case, there it is for all the world to see. End-to-end encryption, which is the hot, oh, well, if you use,
anything can be hacked, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden, guess what? Here's all your stuff out for the whole world to see. So
yeah,
it's it's just a word to the wise, and some people call it some people call it the newspaper test. Would you want your emails and whatever your correspondence, would you want that reprinted on the front page of your local newspaper? Because it could happen. You never know. So you just
Very.
have to be careful. And that doesn't mean, live your life cowering in the corner and not ever having any fun
Mhm.
but you just have to realize at a certain point, bad stuff can happen. So,
That's right. I was just gonna bring up, it kind of brings it full circle, something that I didn't realize until going into this case. I just didn't even think about it. The New York Times that you had mentioned, that whole, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but people crawled through and found metadata on there that the New York Times didn't even think about, showing dates of I'm gonna say allegedly, like, things being uploaded. It's a convoluted way of saying it, but basically Baldoni's trying to say, look, they've been in collusion way before the suit was even brought. Like, they've been working on a smear campaign against me, and now people are finding metadata that kind of allegedly supports his theory. And I'm just saying, to the point of what you were saying, was you never know. Like, even this big
right.
newspaper could have covered their tracks better, and they didn't. So be careful.
Yeah,
Be careful.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to think about that. I mean, I've, had conversations with newspaper reporters on various topics and TV reporters, and you just have to be very, very careful. I mean, you tell people, okay, this is for on the record. This is all. There's actually three ways that you can talk to members of the press, but according to the conventional wisdom. One is on the record,
Mhm,
one is off the record,
mhm.
meaning you can't use any of this.
Sure.
I'm just giving you a tip. You have to go out and figure this stuff out for yourself. Or they have what they call on background, which is when you say a source told,
Okay.
the Chicago Tribune, a source told the Los Angeles Times, whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
That's what's called on background, where they give you information. They've gotten it from a real live person, but they're not telling you what the person's name is.
Gotcha.
Even that, though, can backfire if you get into court. And there have been some very high profile and famous court cases
Mhm,
where newspaper reporters have been ordered by judges to reveal who their source is, either the off the record source or the on background source. And the reporter, in theory, according to their journalistic ethics, should tell the judge, no, I'm not going to say that. And
mhm.
there have been reporters that have gone to jail for, weeks and months because they refuse to acknowledge who their sources are. So anyway,
Wow.
that becomes very interesting. And Jen, let me bring up one other point as
Yeah.
far as the Ryan Reynolds angle is concerned, because I guarantee you this is going to come up.
Mhm.
Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are married.
Yeah.
There is a strong presumption in the law that the sanctity of a marital relationship should be upheld almost without exception. There's what
Mhm.
they call a spousal privilege, and it's the same privilege of things that you say to your minister, priest, member of the clergy. It's the same thing that concerns conversations that you have with a medical caregiver or your conversations with your lawyer.
Mhm.
If anybody wants to see a good Tom Cruise movie, a good legal movie, go and get find yourself a copy of The Firm,
Yeah.
which the whole movie hinges on this notion of attorney-client privilege. And so the
Mhm.
attorney-client privilege, the medical privilege, the religious clergy person privilege,
Mhm.
um, rabbi privilege, whatever it is,
Sure.
or um, or the spousal privilege. And
Mhm.
the reason that the spousal privilege exists is because society has decided collectively that preservation of marriage is a very, very high priority.
Sure.
So they do not want people's relationship in a household, for instance,
Mhm.
to be diminished somehow because one person is afraid that the other person is going to say something, and so it inhibits the communication. And again, the same thing
That makes
applies
sense.
to the
Yeah.
lawyer, the doctor, the priest, whatever it is. You're supposed to have a sacrosanct, free, open relationship with that person. You're not supposed to be concerned that somehow the things that you say to your partner
Mhm.
it's more than your partner. It can't be your boyfriend, girlfriend. It has to be your spouse.
Oh.
um, the things that you say at the kitchen table, things that you say in the bedroom, that stuff is supposed to be absolutely sacrosanct. So that's going to be a really interesting angle of this, because I can imagine there are going to be times
Yeah.
when Justin Baldoni's lawyer is going to want to get some information from Ryan Reynolds or Blake Lively, and is going to want very badly to say to one of them,
Uh-huh.
by the way, Blake, Miss Lively,
Yeah.
what did Ryan Reynolds say to you about this? Or what did he text to you about this? And the other lawyer is going to start hopping up and down saying, no, objection, objection. That's protected by spousal privilege. You cannot force them to disclose that information. There are some exceptions. And I
Uh-huh.
mean, for instance, in the case of, for instance, mental health professionals. Okay, if you tell your psychiatrist, well, you know what, on Monday next week, I'm going to go eliminate
Uh-huh.
permanently my next door neighbor, or that guy across the hall that I was just talking about, because I don't
Yeah.
like he plays his music really loud and it keeps me awake at night and I can't get my work done, whatever. Yes, there's an exception where the psychiatrist can say, excuse me, the preservation of this person's life
Yeah.
outweighs the confidential relationship I have with this client. So that's just an example, and there are others. But I think that's going to be a really sticky angle to this whole thing, is the questioning and the relationship between Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. So
The
stay
way
tuned for
I
that.
understand it too is that part of the reason Ryan's involved is, I'm gonna have this a little bit wrong. I don't know if he owns the company or is heavily involved with this company that ended up taking on some of the promotional. So wouldn't that's a whole other facet too, because he would have a business relation. It's not just my husband's looking out for this guy who may or may not have been a jerk to me. It's a business thing too. So how would that work with the
It,
spouse privilege?
the
Wow.
the judge is going to have to figure that out. It's going to be
Woo.
very, very interesting, and that's why I bring it up. I'll just mention as well, again, going back to the OJ trial, and I know a lot of people follow the Kardashians,
Mhm.
and I don't, so I can't give you too much
I
information.
don't
But
either.
OJ Simpson had a friend named Robert Kardashian,
Right.
and apparently there was the potential that Robert Kardashian was going to be asked to testify and give some damaging info. And again, we're talking about almost 30 years ago now, so forgive me if my recollection is a little off. But basically, Robert Kardashian was going to be asked potentially to testify against O.J. Simpson and would have some damaging things to say to
Mhm.
O.J. Simpson. So, lo and behold, what ended up happening, Robert Kardashian was a lawyer in California, again, I believe,
Mhm.
who was an inactive member of the California bar. And when the threat of him having to testify came up, I believe he reactivated his law license and was added to O.J. Simpson's legal team so that they could
Oh,
then say, you
privilege
can't
or what?
call Robert Kardashian because he's now one of O.J.'s lawyers, and he has a sacrosanct confidential relationship with O.J. now, and so you can't call him to the stand. That's my recollection of.
Wow.
That may not be 100%
That's
correct, but that's
okay.
basically what
Close, yeah.
happened, I think. Yeah. So
Wow.
just a little point of trivia as far as all of these little
Uh-huh.
confidential uh, arrangements are concerned, as far as the laws is taking a look at them.
I'm laughing and wondering, what if spouses were divorced and then they just decide to remarry just to enact that spousal privilege again or something to avoid jail time? I wonder if that's ever happened. I'm sure weird.
Stranger things have happened. Stranger things have happened. Yes.
Uh, Interesting. Wow. Yeah. Now I'm even more. I was already fascinated by this case, but you bring up such good points, and this will be very interesting to see it play out. And oh, I wish there could be cameras in there. I need
Yeah.
all the
Right. Right.
details.
Yeah. Well, and that's, just to go back onto that briefly, that's one of the arguments. It's like, look, what are we trying to do here? Ultimately, number one goal is to get justice and to get
Mhm,
the case to come out correctly. And
mhm.
for all of the flaws of the American legal system, nobody has ever been able to suggest anything that's better.
Okay.
So we keep doing it the way that we do it, for better or worse, because, as I said, nobody has ever come up with a superior solution.
Mhm.
A secondary aspect of what are we trying to do here is we're trying to have transparency. We're trying to have a system set up where not only the parties, but we want the public to have confidence in what's going on here too. And that's why we have, unless you have a situation, for instance, that is involving a child that we're trying to protect the child's identity or something that's happened to them that's
Yeah.
that's very unsavory,
Uh-huh.
then yes, the judge can say, look, all you people in the gallery take a hike. We're going to close and lock the door to the courtroom, and we're going to do this in secrecy. But
Mhm.
generally, that's very frowned upon.
True.
And so that's why you can walk into any courtroom on any day of the week and sit down and just listen to what's going on. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about the American legal system.
Yeah.
So um, then the question comes up, all right, well, how far are we going to take that? Wouldn't it be even better if we had courtroom cameras and the public could watch this on Law and Crime or Court TV or on whatever, on YouTube, whatever it is?
Alright, so Jen, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So at some point, and this conversation is ongoing. This is not just, oh, well, nobody's ever thought of this. There
Right.
has never been an opportunity to talk about this. Believe me, this is talked about all the time by members of, at the American Bar Association meetings, at the state bar meetings, when the judges from certain courts get together, by legislatures, all of this stuff, it is constantly talked about. And as we know, I mean, the world's media is rapidly evolving with sort of the apparent skidding of the mainstream media and alternative media coming online in
Mhm.
a greater and greater degree of prominence. So it could change at some point.
Mhm.
Um, at some point, for instance, again to the Depp trial, at some point you couldn't have cameras in the courts in Virginia,
Mhm.
and at some point the judges in Virginia said, you know what, we think we can keep a handle on everything and kind of serve. We can still run um, acceptable trials and also let the public have an eye into what's going on here. We think
Yeah.
we can kind of have the best of both worlds. And I think
Sure.
you saw that in the Depp case. In the O.J.
I think
Simpson case,
too.
no, it turned into a freak show and a circus.
Mm.
Um, so anyway,
No, you're right. I'm gonna, timestamp this. I'm realizing I have done a better job of pulling Ryan Reynolds, hold on, Ryan Reynolds, that what they're alleging against Ryan Reynolds than I did with Blake Lively. I'd like to know exactly. I know some of the I can't articulate it right. What exactly? She accused him of weight shaming, of kissing her too much. Do you remember? I can
those
pull
were
them if
the
not.
yeah, those are the two main things I think.
Let me see. Blake Lively's exact accusations against Justin Baldoni. Like, I'd like to know what she's accusing him of behaviorally wise,
Hmm.
you know? Let's see. It just says sexual harassment and smear campaign. Like, I wish I had detail. Let me see if Grok can tell me. Explain what Justin Bal no. Explain what Blake Lively exactly is accusing Justin Baldoni having done on the set of It Ends With Us. Okay, I was thinking about it. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, here we go. All right. I'm gonna pick this up right here. I'm just gonna kind of go into it for a minute because I just want to be sure.
Sure.
I know people want to know. So something that I did, I realize I'm going heavier into the Ryan Reynolds accusations. I would like to circle back, if you don't mind, for a minute and just kind of, and some of them are sensitive, but I would like to kind of spell out a little bit more about what Blake's accusing Justin Baldoni of, since she brought the, if I'm saying that right, she brought the initial suit, is the way I'm
Hmm.
understanding it. So again, these are accusations. She is alleging that Baldoni engaged in, quote, repeated, YouTube doesn't like certain words, so I'm going to call it SH, blank
Yep.
harassment, so
Hmm.
repeated SH, and quote, other disturbing behavior on set. This includes him showing her, again, according to her, nude videos or images of women to her, and
Mhm.
improvising physical intimacy, such as kissing or touching, that was not rehearsed or agreed upon in advance. So that's interesting to me because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about where's the line? How does that work?
Right.
Who decides that? She's also accusing him of a hostile work environment, claiming that his behavior created this and involving inappropriate conversations, alleged retaliatory or abusive behavior, and discussions about his past certain kind of relationships,
Mhm.
and a certain kind of addiction to adult films, which she found off-putting and volatile. She's also accusing him of a retaliation and smear campaign. So she's claiming that after she raised concerns that she's alleging that he, along with his team, initiated a retaliatory scheme to damage her reputation, including hiring a crisis communications team to engage in a social manipulation. These are her words: social manipulation campaign aimed at discrediting her. She claims
Mhm.
that they use tactics such as planting negative stories in media and creating social media content to portray her negatively.
Mhm.
And then there's just two left, and the fourth point she's alleging is that Baldoni, um, she's accusing him of adding sex scenes, including oral sex, on camera climaxing, and things like that that were not in the script that she had approved of when she signed on to the project. She demanded that Baldoni stop improvising, particularly with kissing scenes without prior discussion. So again, we kind of talked about this because his side paints a different picture that he allowed it to be up to her. If there was improvised kissing, it would have been at her discretion, to add to a scene. They specifically cite, like, when they got engaged. I think the script called for, I don't know how many, like 2 kisses, something like that. And it was up to her if she felt like the scene would be improved. She could kiss him more, basically, is how it's what they
Mhm.
had worked out. Again, all alleged, but it's interesting to hear things like that. Okay. And then the last thing that according to my Google machine is that she's accusing him of psychological tactics, including an accusation that Baldoni claimed. Um, oh, I didn't know about this. She's saying that Baldoni claimed he could speak to her deceased father. That's not funny, but I'm laughing thinking, isn't that what Meghan claims? She can talk to Diana and seals or something. But anyway,
Yeah.
which she's claiming to have found disturbing. Now, something not mentioned in here, but I know I'd read about, and I think you brought it up too, is there are accusations of basically body shaming, like, wanting to know how much she weighed, asking her, I think her personal trainer or something like that. Whereas he paints it differently. It's more to do with a back injury and knowing about how much he was going to have to lift so he could, physically prepare. So a lot of interesting stuff there, but that's the way I'm understanding. Is that basically, are you in agreement as far as how you understand the claims? Is that what you're understanding as well?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay.
And again, my high level takeaway was it would be that this is all very fascinating
Yeah.
because again of the context in which these alleged activities and questions and comments and activities and behaviors all took place.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
not talking about the world that 99% of the rest of us live
Mhm.
in. I mean, if you
You can't
were in
go
an
ask
office
somebody my weight. Yeah, right,
exactly, in an office environment or anything
Right.
like this, I mean,
Uh-huh.
yes, very, very black and white, and yet
Mhm.
all of a sudden there's this gray area. And
Yeah,
I think what'll be interesting as well is that, the law is not going to account for all of this stuff. And this is one of the beautiful things about the system. This is why we have a jury,
mhm.
because at some point the lawyers at the end of the case, assuming it gets to a deliberation stage,
Mhm.
lawyers are just going to say, look, you guys are just going to have to decide. We've got some guidelines here, and we've got jury questions for you to fill out, and you know damages calculations for you to make, and so forth. But some of this stuff, you're just going to have to say, who do you believe? Do you believe him or do you believe her?
Yeah,
And that's really what it's going to boil down to at the end of the day. It's going to be very, very interesting.
That is interesting. Wow, that's very interesting. If you don't mind, I want to do the same thing for his countersuit against her. Let me pull that really
Sure.
quick so I can outline. Let's see.
Yep.
So, let's see. How did I even word that? It was like, okay. Let's see. Explain why Justin Baldoni is countersuing Blake Lively and exactly what he is accusing her of doing. Okay. It's pulling it right now. This is so interesting, though. It really is. It's so interesting to
Good.
me. I find it fascinating because I never even thought about just that. It's like, I guess why would I think through, oh yeah, is 3 kisses allowed, but 4 kisses is not? Like, where's the
Exactly.
line? How does that work?
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, I guess
That's
you would agree on big issues like, okay, my top's not coming off, whatever it is, but small issues like I said you could put your hand above my waist. I didn't say anything about, like whatever, it's
yes,
just interesting. That's weird. Huh. I
absolutely.
don't I
Absolutely.
don't
And again, to go back to the question of how's the jury gonna
decide. Yeah.
divine an answer to all of this. Again, it sort of goes back to community standards. I'm sure that when this goes to trial, that Justin Baldoni's lawyers are going to make some of the same points that I've just made. It's like, look, this is not we're not here at the offices of Google or
Yeah.
Amazon or whatever.
Right.
This is a weird ecosystem that we're swimming around in, a weird ocean, a
Mhm.
pond that we're swimming in here. And it's entirely conceivable that he would ask her, how much do you weigh? I don't want to lift you and,
Absolutely.
wreck
Yes.
my back in the process of
Right.
doing that. And if the coach or whoever makes these decisions says, wait a minute, you're asking too much. If Blake Lively weighs 200 pounds, which I have no idea what Blake Lively weighs, but let's just, as for sake of our argument, let's say she weighs 200 pounds, and the stunt guy might say, wait, you can't ask him to lift her if she weighs 200 pounds. 100 pounds, okay, fine, not a problem. But
Uh-huh.
this is too big an ask. So
Right.
it's entirely conceivable that that would be a legitimate question. And the jurors are just going to have to go in and say, we believe him, we believe
Mhm.
her,
Yeah.
however it comes out.
Uh-huh.
You know,
I
and
had
again, in the
to
Depp trial, we believe Johnny Depp to the tune of $10 million, and we believe Amber Heard to the tune of $2 million.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's go home.
Yeah. I'm laughing because you said too big of an ask. But I swear to God, it cut out and it sounded like you said
Too big of a ASS.
it
Yeah,
was
that
just
might be, maybe
such
that too.
funny timing. Such funny timing. Oh my God. No, that's really funny. No, but you're absolutely right. If I make shoes, it is normal that I'm going to say, "Hey, John, what size shoe do you wear?" If I make
Absolutely.
purses and I'm like, "Hey, John, what size shoe do you wear?" You're gonna be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" None of your
Exactly.
business. So, yeah,
Yes. Yes,
it's
entirely.
context.
And
Yeah.
the interesting thing about this is that, let's remember Justin Baldoni has these dual roles. He's not
True.
only star he's not only starring in the movie, but he's also very heavily involved in the production as well.
Production. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, when he did this, or when he said that, or when he asked this or that,
Mhm.
was he asking as an actor? Was he asking as a member of the production team? The context of all this is going to be very important.
Oh, that is. I didn't even yeah, you're right. I didn't think about it from that point of view. Wow. Huh. Interesting. I guess we could get back. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me pull his exact allegations against her because I would be interested or what he's alleging happened
Yep.
against Blake Lively in the countersuit. So the first one, and again, I'm looking at my phone just to get it because I want to make sure I have this right. So the first one he's accusing her of is defamation.
Hmm.
It says Baldoni claims that, and I just got this. I was Googling this, so I'm just getting this off Google. Baldoni claims that Lively made false accusations of S harassment,
Hmm.
and other misconduct to damage his reputation. He argues that her allegations are unsubstantiated and part of a calculated move to control the narrative around the film It Ends With Us.
Mm-hmm.
I find that so completely, even that aspect of it, so completely interesting, that the idea, if this is the case, let's say he's telling the truth here. Again, we're just going in on this. That is so interesting, that to control the narrative, the idea of, again, suing him for these SH claims and having to wade through all that to see, well, is it a thing that happened, or is it just is it damage control for her? That's
That's right.
fascinating. Yeah. Huh.
Yep.
That he's accusing her of civil extortion. It makes sense to me. I don't think I've heard that term before. He accuses Lively, along with her husband, Ryan Reynolds, of using these allegations as leverage to gain control over the film's production, including script changes. That's interesting. And creative decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Baldoni alleges that Lively's actions were an attempt to extort creative control by threatening to tarnish his image if he did not comply with her demands. I'm sure you have something to say about that. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I don't know.
Yep.
Civil extortion. I just haven't heard that, but it makes so much sense. Is that something that I'm sure you've heard of it. Is that something that comes up quite a bit? Is that something you're familiar with very much or not? I mean, it's
Well,
rare.
normally when people think of the concept of extortion, they think about like, okay, well,
Like
I
money?
saw you, cheating on your spouse.
Uh-huh.
Pay me $10,000 and I'll keep my mouth shut and pretend this never happened. That's the kind of extortion that
Okay.
most people would think of. This strikes me as a little bit different in terms of a type of extortion where you have an existing business relationship and you're trying to leverage in an unsavory way the terms. You're trying to leverage a certain allegation in order to change the terms of the business relationship. In other words,
So you gave me
yeah,
4 kisses, I'll tell on you, essentially, for that if you don't let me change the script or something like that? I don't know.
yeah, that would be a very simple example of it. But yeah,
Um,
something along those lines.
huh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I'm processing that. I just never heard it makes sense, but I've never thought about that. Civil extortion, okay. Huh. To try to gain control, that is, if that's the case, that again is just an awful detail of a horrible work environment.
Yeah, it would be basically somewhat. I'm always a little reluctant to give analogies, but let's say two people own a business,
Mhm.
and person A decides they want to take over the business and force person B out, and they say to person B, okay, you need to sell me your half of the business, or else I'm going to tell your wife that you've been gambling away all of your money and you are hanging out at strip clubs or whatever it is, and person B might really find that to be a threat
Mhm.
and might say, okay, fine, well, that would be what I would
Extortion.
consider within
Uh-huh.
the realm of civil extortion.
Wow, yeah, huh, interesting. So the next thing he's alleging against Blake Lively, Baldoni claims it's invasion of privacy. He's claiming that Lively and her team engaged in the unauthorized release of private communications, such as text messages to the media, which he sees as a violation of privacy for the purpose of smearing him. I haven't thought about that, but I mean, you can answer that. So if I text you, John, and I'm like, I don't know, Meghan sucks, and then you turn around and you go on Entertainment Tonight and you're like, well, Jen said Meghan sucks and showed the text. Like, is there an expectation of privacy? I guess there's a lot more to it, but like, I would think
Yeah,
that's yours to do with what you want.
well, that's basically correct.
Mhm.
Although the argument could conceivably be made that if there is an expectation that you're involving in business communications of some sort,
Okay.
that there is a right of privacy to some of those types of
Oh,
things, and that there's a confidentiality. And again, it's going to be one of those things that the judge or the jury has to look at and say, okay,
mhm.
well, we need to consider the context of this.
True.
What exactly was released? Why was it released? What were the ramifications of it being
Mhm.
released? And then once we know that, we can have a better insight into exactly what happened here and what we think
Sure.
was the person's motivation for releasing that information.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, there's so many facets to this. He also accuses her of a smear campaign. He asserts that Lively orchestrated a smear campaign against him, similar to what she's accusing him of. Baldoni's lawyer suggests that Lively was behind negative publicity and manipulated public perception to portray herself as a victim while damaging his reputation. Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun.
Well, where have we heard something like that before? There's a certain couple that allegedly has very close ties to People magazine. And that, every time a story comes out in People magazine, it, extols the virtues of a certain
Yeah,
wife of a prince. So, you know, these things can happen in a positive way. They can also happen in a negative way.
you're right. I find exactly what you're saying. I find when those two who shall not be named do it, I find it particularly offensive because at least in this case, so you have Blake and Baldoni, and whatever side you're on, at least the other one is allowed to speak up. The royal family doesn't do that. They don't directly address so that Harry can go in and say, yeah, King Charles made me wear a banana peel on my head, and King Charles isn't going to come out and say, no, I didn't,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just
Well, I mean, part of that is, I mean, the royal family there's nothing holding them back from
sure.
responding except for their own internal
They just
set of
don't.
rules. At
Mhm.
the same time, I think people, at least in that case, have been smart enough to say, based on just sort of their gut instinct, it's like, boy, that book was kind of a
Yeah.
that was a kind of a low blow there.
Uh-huh.
Why I think the royal family gets a lot of respect for taking the high road,
I think so.
even though it leaves a lot of allegations out there just sort of floating in the wild. At the same time, you have to respect, never complain, never explain.
True.
And you look at the people who are complaining and say, what's going on here? Why is that person constantly running their mouth? Why don't they just
True.
put a lid on it?
And in the case of spirits, that adage of give them enough rope, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
yeah.
And you can, listen to any number of commentators who say, well, in their opinion, that just is a reflection on the lack of integrity and lack of, intelligence,
Mhm.
again, allegedly, or in someone's opinion, of
Mhm.
that certain prince.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
I think most people would look at a book like that and say, gee, oh, gosh.
Shut up, Harry. Shut up, Harry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, ugh, stop, stop, stop. Stop now before, don't make it any worse. Oops, flip the page. Eesh, gosh, he did. So,
That's right. I think so too. So the next accusation he lobbied against her was control over film production. So Baldoni alleges that Lively attempted to assert unilateral control over the film's production, including unauthorized script changes, which he claims were beyond her agreed upon role as an actress. He
mhm,
contends that she used her and her husband's influence to sideline him from promotional activities and decision making processes.
yeah,
This is interesting to me because just as you're saying, most jobs you cannot walk into the boss's office and say, "Well, I couldn't go up to you as if you were my attorney, I can't go up and say, I'm the attorney now. I'm it. You go sit down. I'm going to go argue this case."
yeah.
It doesn't work like
Well,
that.
you actually sort of could, but
Oh,
I think we get the idea. It's
okay.
just not the way the world works in
Most
most cases.
places. Yeah, I wouldn't walk in and be like, "Okay, I'm the boss now.
Right.
I'm going to take over." So this is an interesting situation where you may be allowed some creative control, but hopefully they got it all in writing. That's all. I would think with all the contracts and stuff that are
Yes.
signed.
Yes.
Mm.
And not only that, I mean, again, going back to the Depp trial, you remember all the expert witnesses who were involved, Dr. Shannon Curry and Dr. Spiegel, for better or worse, and all these other people that came in and they offered little tidbits here, or they opined on something based on their professional expertise. And I suspect that there'll probably be Hollywood agents and experts and lawyers, entertainment lawyers, and all kinds of other people who will be dragged into this to talk about, okay, well, here's what the contract said in terms of her roles and responsibilities, and how does this contract plus the conventional wisdom on interpretation of a contract like this, how does that agree or not agree with the reality of what apparently transpired? That's going to be another interesting aspect of the case.
I guess so. That is interesting. Wow. And then let's see another. The last accusation he's got against her is misrepresentation of events. Baldoni's lawsuit disputes that Lively's portrayal of events on set, claiming that her allegations were concocted after she faced backlash for what was perceived as, quote, tone deaf, as we've mentioned, promotion of the film and her own personal brands. That was another thing. I don't know if you, again, I keep up with the celeb gossip stuff. So this was interesting. Side note, she, around this time had launched a hair care line. I don't know when she launched it, but it was being promoted around this time. And again, why are you involving any kind of hair care stuff in a DV movie situation? I understand if it's a movie about a salon, maybe you would, but it's just, again, tone deafness. But
well, and there's some weirdness involved too. And again, I go back to a comment that I've made in some other videos. Let's assume she is a narcissist.
Okay.
In the same way that there are allegations that Meghan Markle is a narcissist, and allegations that Amber Heard is a narcissist.
Allegations Jada Pinkett Smith is a narcissist. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the list is not short. You look at the behaviors of people who are alleged to possess those personality traits, and you think to yourself, none of this makes any sense. What rational person would behave that way and make that kind of an allegation? It's very hard. I think it's very hard to internalize, and it's hard for people to get into their head unless they have had some firsthand experience with a person who has had those characteristics. It's like saying, the snow outside my window right now is purple. What are you talking about? I mean, like everybody knows the snow is white. I'm looking at it. No, you're wrong. It's purple. That is the kind of cognitive dissonance, I think, that pervades the thought processes of a lot of people who are narcissists. And if Blake Lively turns out to be somebody with some severe personality defects, as has been alleged in some people's opinions, then it's entirely possible that some of the stuff that would just make you say, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Well, that may not be the case. It may come across to you and me and everybody else that's the case, but that person may still insist that snow out there is purple and not white.
Or that they got married.
You just have to get your head around it. It's a bizarre concept, but it is within the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Huh. I said, or that they got married 3 days before by the Archbishop, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
okay, sure. Yeah. Everybody else says no, that didn't happen, but okay, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's interesting. Huh. Enjoy your purple snow. Make purple
Thank
snow
you.
angels. Hey, will you show that when you do walks around DC where the purple snow is? Because I'm interested.
Yeah. Right. I showed you some dirty white snow the other day, but no, this is a whole different thing. This is going to be purple.
That's right. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, John was kind enough to come on it was a live chat and he had filmed around walking up to the courthouse around Harry's visa and that whole case and showed us some beautifully brown snow. And I made jokes about making snow angels and you said, no, don't do that.
Oh, it was more than brown. It was black. It was good. It was good beautifully aged, dirty, urban city snow.
That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think that was it. Let's see. The last part of it, it's still under the misrepresentation of events. It just says that oh, so he's alleging, yeah, she concocted these after facing backlash on the tone deaf promotion of the film. He argues that Lively's narrative was a deflection from her own public image issues. So
Yeah.
that therein, I mean, that's kind of a generalized way of explaining it, but it's interesting to me
Yeah.
on what's
There's a certain so what aspect to all of those allegations. Um, okay, talk is cheap, as the saying goes. The real point of interest is, what were the damages? How did this impact Justin Baldoni, and how did it affect his wallet? How did it affect his reputation? His ability to get work, all of these types of things. That's what's really important. Just because she shot off her mouth allegedly about something or other doesn't mean that there's
sure.
any. Yeah, it's all about it's again the so what. It's the damage that it caused to him. That's what's going to be very important, not whether she said something stupid that may or may not have been correct.
That's interesting. I would think with his role, not just it'd be different if he was just an not just, but if he was just an actor on the set. So what? Like, yeah, people are difficult to work with, but you're still there getting your
Right.
fat paycheck, and then, but I would think as part of his, I don't know how to say, vested interest in the whole project and needing it to do well, and then having negative publicity around it. I guess one could argue that might get more people to see it, but still, yeah, that's interesting. Huh? That's
That's right.
interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's like people, I'm sure, and I'm the only reason I keep invoking the Johnny Depp trial is because so
Okay.
many people
Yeah.
are so familiar with it. But
Yeah.
one of the issues in the Johnny Depp trial was that all of a sudden his earning potential and his star power had been radically diminished by these allegations that Amber Heard had made against him. So, I mean, it's an important. I mean, this is your this is putting food on the table.
Yeah.
And putting gas in the car. I mean, so and I'm paying the electric bill and so forth. So that this is important stuff. This is not just okay. Well, this is idle chit chat, and everybody knows it goes all around. But all of a sudden, the allegation is, hey, this has impacted my ability to earn a living and my reputation and my my the sense of pride that I have, and I'm not getting cast in movies anymore, and you get the picture.
Yeah, I do. That's interesting. All right. Okay, so that was part 1. That's just part of it. There's still so much more that we get into and go over and deep dive. So join me tomorrow for part 2 of this. Again, a huge thank you to my special guest, John Witherspoon. He's wonderful, isn't he? He's such a good job of breaking all that down, making it much easier for us to understand and going over all the details. Thank you, John. I appreciate you all. Make sure you're subscribed to John, or sorry, follow John on Instagram. And of course, if he ends up setting up a channel at some point, you'll be the first to know, and we'll all jump on and follow John. But thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. Join me tomorrow for part 2 of this whole wild showdown. I can't wait to keep covering it with you all. Thank you so much for being here. Honk honk clockers. Bye-bye.